Yeah, cool. Awesome. Hello, everyone. Hope you are doing well, and hope that everything is going well with all of you. We're gonna do a new thing today. We've never really done this before, so we're gonna just sort of mess around with some things. I'm gonna be looking at some homebrew stuff. I'm also gonna be answering some questions that people might have about everything, be it D&D or other RPGs or running games in particular. That's sort of my speciality. If anyone is here that doesn't know me, my name is Matthew. I run 12 games a week in a variety of systems. Some of them D&D, some of them not. Some of them are streamed here on Twitch, and you can check them out here on this channel. If you enjoy my content, please follow. I always appreciate that. So I think we're going to start with looking at some homebrew work by a friend of mine. I have never seen this before, so this is blind, so there'll be a little bit of just reading text and sharing and all that good stuff. This is by Spicy Curry Bread. Spicy Curry Bread is a very cool local, very cool player in one of my campaigns, and also has some design stuff. Hey, Feely, welcome. Thanks for joining us and being here. Cool. So this is, let's see, we're going to look at his R cubes. These are magic dice that require, they're requiring attunement. They are uncommon to rare in design. So let's see, the R cubes are magic oddities that take the form of six-sided dice with princess cut gems set in each face. The dice are each composed of gems of one predominant color, and each gem is enchanted with a spell that is cast when the die is set on that face, or is rolled and lands on that face. If any of the conditions of the cast spell aren't met, or there are no available targets, the spell fails and a use is expended. The number of times a day that an R cube can be used, set, or rolled depends on the face being used and the spell being cast. Those numbers are detailed in the R cube spell table. And here we have a look at the R cube spell table. So we've got 5 different dice. It looks like red, blue, yellow, black, and white. Let's see. Disguise self is very important. So all of them get disguise self, specifically as Stygian Flame, Abyssborn, Thunderbird, Voidspawn, or Lux Spawn. And then it looks like red gets fire spells. It looks like Burning Hand, Scorching Ray, Fireball, Fire Shield. Marcus, do I actually have access to this stuff? Can I? Because I'm actually looking at the stream, but I feel like I should be looking directly at it. Oh yeah, let me. Is it pinned? Sorry, everyone. No. Cool. Yeah, no problem. I just realized I'm looking at the stream. That means I can't scroll up and down. You can scroll up and down, but I cannot scroll up and down. So let's see what we got here. Mm-hmm. There it is. I now have it. Excellent. Cool. So let's look at this. So it looks like, yeah, red gives us disguise self and fire spells. Looks like blue gives us disguise self and cold spells, fog cloud and misty step being sort of extensions of the cold family. Yellow being thunder and lightning spells, with being sort of extensions. Black being darkness, death, and curse stuff, and white being okay, interesting. Light stuff. Okay. Yeah, guiding bolt, moon, beam, day, light, guarding the dominant person. Okay, empowered disguise. I'm gonna read all this before I really dive into this. So I'm gonna scroll down to empowered disguise. When an attuned user of the R cube sets or rolls the die on its first face, they take on the appearance of an ancient masked hero. The mask covers the wearer's entire face, but allows them to speak and breathe as normal and communicate as per the message cantrip. But with any number of R cube attuned creatures, while disguised, the wearer gains resistance to the damage type listed below. Cool. Heroic armaments. As a bonus action, a user can will their R cube to take the shape of a weapon they're proficient with or an arcane focus. The weapon/focus formed in this way has an innate ability to, based on the R cube's color, detailed below. The ability can be used at will as a free action, but the user must be holding the R cube in weapon form to activate it. Red, Hunter's Mark. Blue, Detect Magic. Yellow, Expected Tree. Black, Spare the Dying. White, Silent Image. Okay. An Arcubist can cast any spell with a single target through the weapon attack using the Heroic Ornament. Soulbound. An Arcube will always find its way back to its user, seemingly by chance or magic. In the event that the Arcube is sent to another plane of dimension by any means, it will be rendered inert until its user enters the same plane or dimension. An attuned character can coerce an unrestrained Arcube directly into their hand from a distance of 30 feet with a successful DC 10 mental ability check. Distance of 60 feet with a successful DC 15 mental ability check. Arcube that's being held can telekinetically be retrieved. Wow, cool. Placing gems. Though the Arcubes are complex in their enchantment, they are outfitted. Blah blah blah. Cool. Okay. Actually, you know what, Marcus? Can we? I don't know if this is possible, but can I bring you in as my guest right now? Can you join the call and appear? I'd like to chat with you directly. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Let's talk about these Arcubes. And all that stuff. Hey, Pine Martin / Evan. Thanks for joining in. Unmute yourself.
Hey, there we go.
There you go. Hey, Marcus, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Cool. So let's talk about this a little bit. So the Arcubes here. So the idea is sort of like a Power Rangers vibe.
Yeah,
right?
It's very heavily Power Rangers influenced.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think then we should I think we should make it more directly influenced before we start pulling away from it.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So that would be sort of my first instinct. I would just start from the assumption that disguise self is the wrong word to use, because you don't really mean disguise self. You mean a magical mask appears over the character's face.
Yeah, it's more like mage's armor or something than like that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way of putting it. I think calling that a spell and giving it slot unlimited and roll unlimited, is
it could just be that.
It should just. I mean, it should even be like. I mean, if we're going full Power Rangers, right? When you say the magic words, right?
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I watched Power Rangers, but
it's Morphin time.
Activate. It's Morphin time. Boar, activate. Whatever.
Yeah.
Then when you say the magic words, a magical mask appears over your face, and you are effectively in disguise, right? Something like that. Hey Shoko, I'm glad you can watch it. Seems like an unusual good time zone for you because you're Europe, but that's okay. So so that would be the first thing. I would delete this first part because I think calling it one of your spells per day is a mistake.
And then what would you replace it with?
I mean, I would replace it with something very, very blatant and obvious. Let's see. The Arcubes are magic oddities, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I think what we need to add is like a to use section, right? To use the Arcube, a player must state that they're using the Arcube and then roll it. Upon rolling it, their appearance changes into this, and then a description of what the appearances are. Does that make sense? As just like a baseline there. Marcus, are you cutting out?
Oh no, sorry, I was muted. Yeah. So that first paragraph, but like a little more fleshed out, and then include the.
No, I would separate it out. I think that one of the things we want to focus is that we want to have make sure information is given in concrete chunks that clarify things. And I think actually we need to clarify this first paragraph in the first place. The first paragraph. So I want to think about this in how information is communicated. That's something that I'm always very interested in. I'm obsessed with this guy named Edward Tufte. I actually have no idea how to pronounce his name, but he's all about the way in which you present information. What is the best possible way to give information? And for me, I think the first thing we want to do, the first paragraph should be, what does a player see when they see the die before they are attuned to it, right?
Okay.
What's the first piece of information? It's a 6-sided die. There's 5 of them. They each have a different color, right? That's the most important stuff. That's what I want first. I like all this stuff here. It's all good flavor. I would separate it out so that we don't really need to know that each gem is enchanted with a spell that is cast. We can actually put that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I would have a second paragraph that explains the mechanics of it. Let's also talk about the mechanics of it for 1 second
Yeah.
before we start adding too much. Each gem, you say, is enchanted with a spell that is cast when the die is set on the face or is rolled and lands on that face. So I guess my question then would be, why would anyone ever roll the die?
Yeah. So the setting it was a function of like wanting them to have the choice to set the die on that face and then use the spell knowingly, and then
Mm-hmm.
um since that would be limited, I would want them to
Mm-hmm.
be able to still use the spells that are loaded on each face of the die, but not have control over what spell comes out. Just to add that
Mm-hmm.
element of like randomness that's inherent to a die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see what you're going for. I don't like it.
You would do one or the other, or you would do
I would do one or
all
the other.
set. Yeah.
Yeah, either they have control or this is random. And for me, they're dice. I would just make it random.
Yeah.
Um I would set conditions upon it. Like I would try to set the spells so that they are always the same sort of spell. Like I think we'll talk about the spell list in a second, but
Yeah.
I think there are spells that sort of stand out here as not quite the right spell. Um but yeah, I would do it all random, and then like basically what they're rolling is they don't know how powerful it's going to be, so they're actually it sort of fits in with the D&D aesthetic of hope that hoping that hey Nova, hoping that you'll be able to roll high to do more damage or be more effective.
Mm.
That's what I would do. I would get rid of the like 'cause if I can set it, then I'm probably going to cast Flame Strike twice,
Oh,
right?
I'm just remembering
Or
now
once, right?
too.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing was that I wanted there to be some synergy between like so if you use this item in a campaign, my idea is that like it wouldn't just be one person in the party with it. It would be
Mm-hmm.
the entire party like finds them as like a maybe as a plot point. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
but I wanted there to be the
Oh,
possibility
hi
of
Jess.
synergy. Hey, Jess. Um, between the people using them.
Mm-hmm.
So if they choose to use the same face, like the spells are empowered or something along those lines. I hadn't like
Mm.
really sussed that out yet. Um, but that's also not entirely necessary, and it might be more interesting if that happens via chance.
I
Um,
mean, I certainly like. I mean, so the difficulty with that is that it's compounded chance, right?
hmm hmm
You're doubling the chance statistics in one
Yeah,
roll, um, and using that as sort of a excuse to be hyper powerful is really fun and cool,
yeah,
but also worth pointing out. It's a degree of variance that can like affect the game very very heavily, right?
yeah,
When we talk about one thing when we're designing magic items in particular, we always want to talk about variance and impact. So a magic item that like the most common magic items that we see these days, the most common ones that we see these days are very flat. They're not dynamic. They are things like drift globe. This globe has the light spell. You can cast the light spell with this globe. Or um, dark vision goggles. You have dark vision goggles. You can see. Or even something like the immovable rod, right? You click it in place, and this rod is stuck here. It cannot move, right?
they
Uh,
do one thing.
they do one thing, um, and there's no chance, right? There's zero
Right,
randomness in any of those things. Now
right.
there are things that have more randomness in them. Obviously, the deck of many things is the classic example. Um, but you want to think about, but like the deck of many things is an example that a lot of DMs are afraid of, right? A lot of them
Yeah,
don't want to use the deck of many things. I am
potentially
not one
world
of
ending.
them.
I think some people think of it as.
I mean, world ending is a strong word, but certainly campaign ending. I am not one of those people. I love the deck of many things, and I've used it multiple times to great fun, as some people in chat can attest. I enjoy the deck of many things, but but the type of randomness that it has isn't is actually like, despite the difficulty of the deck of many things, and there are many, the type of randomness it has is more um, it's huge, but it's also narrow because it tends to affect one person,
Hmm.
the person who is drawing the cards, and it might be great for that person or it be awful for that person, but it still is that one person who is most affected, and I think that's pretty like that's pretty focused. It's very unlikely for the deck of many things to have a card be drawn and the big bad guy dies, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's not in the deck of many things in 5e, I don't believe. Um, so instead, it becomes a different. It becomes a different thing. It's more like I draw this and I become more powerful. I draw this and I become weaker. So even though it's like a huge degree of variance there, that's basically what our options are,
yeah.
right?
It's like mostly linear,
These things, yeah.
despite
Whereas with
having a
these
lot of
things,
choices.
exactly, yeah, exactly. Whereas with these things, if we're empowering spells when we both happen to roll the same thing, like the possibility of, I mean, okay. So I want to think about the type of. I'm actually gonna. I want to actually step back and make sure that I actually believe what I'm saying. If that makes
No, I have to
sense.
do that all the time. No, I hear you.
Yeah. So I want to think about the type of campaign that these things are available in. The R cubes. So one thing that's like fundamentally important is that late campaigns, these are not impactful at all, right?
Meaning the spells. Sorry
Yeah,
to
like if
clarify.
we're in a high tier campaign, if
Yeah.
we're starting, tier 4, level 16, level 17, level 18, right? These are all spells that the spellcasters have. Um,
Yeah, yeah, true.
so it doesn't, so they're not impactful there. If we're in a mid tier game, they're relatively impactful, but they're more like diversifying tools, right? They give someone more variety in their arsenal, right? You give
Yeah.
the red gem to a fighter, and now they have AOE in a way that they didn't have before,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Um, if we're in a low level campaign, then these are, I don't want to say game shattering, but they're sort of game focusing. It
Yeah.
becomes a campaign about low level characters being able to take on something greater than they normally could,
Yeah.
right?
Totally. Yeah.
Um, Now there are problems with that, obviously, because um, they're still low level characters. Uh, so the first thoughts I have about that would be like they still have relatively low hit points, right?
Yeah. That's my
Um,
first thought too. Yeah.
a level 1 character who casts Flame Strike still has probably at most, if they're a barbarian, 15 hit points,
Yeah.
right?
Oof.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe 16, right? So they can cast Flame Strike, but they can't take a Flame Strike. So they're unlikely to be able to take on actually much more powerful enemies. It's more like they can dispose of mediumly more powerful enemies easily, which is
Provided they
interesting.
don't get hit a lot.
Yeah, provided they don't get hit a lot. Yeah, so I'm just sort of thinking this through a little bit.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense, especially in that light.
Mm-hmm.
Just for like a tiny bit of background,
Yeah, go for it.
the spells are arranged aside from the first one, aside from disguise self. They're first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, I believe.
Mm.
Uh, Descending. So spell 2 is first, spell 6 is fifth. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
also
that looks
chose.
exactly
Uh,
like 4 or 5.
I
Mm-hmm.
also chose spells that are all in the SRD. Before I had some stuff that was in other campaign books, but I wanted it to be stuff that that anyone could use in theory, and that I would not get sued for.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a huge
Yeah.
fan of using things in the SRD and that stuff. Sometimes I like doing alternates. I'll frequently do like I'll do a like hey, this is the SRD version of this spell, but if you want, this thing is more flavorful. I've seen that done a couple times, particularly with I think there's a spell called Whirlwind in or Maelstrom or something like that that's in Xanathar's. That
Yeah.
pops up a lot on a lot of like people like this is perfect flavor for my class, but it's not in the SRD. So you can have Fog Cloud, but Whirlwind is really what you should have. Things like that. And so I think that's like interesting thing. So okay, so I'm not certain. So I have to admit, like my first step is I'm not certain where I would use this in a campaign,
Yeah. It's
and
very
that makes
much a wrench. Like if you throw it in there, it's gonna come up the works.
it certainly gums up the works in a low level campaign,
Yeah.
and is only sort of impactful in a medium level campaign, and is
Yeah.
not impactful in a high level campaign. So it's a weird mix of things there. So I don't quite see where it fits in yet, but maybe we'll find something soon as we work through it a little bit more. So let's talk about the spell list, though. I
Yeah.
obviously we still know where this is going, but let's talk about the spell list a little bit.
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to say kudos on all SRD stuff. I think that's great. I think the variance in your spell list is a little bit too high for me as well.
The variance.
Yes, and let me tell you what I mean by that.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Some of these spells are offensive, some of them are defensive, some of them are utility. That deeply incentivizes people not to ever roll, right? Because if I want to do damage and I get Misty on that blue chart, I'm in bad shape.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
If I want to help save the world or whatever, and there's no dead body near me, and I get animate dead, what even happens, right? So it just, everything about this disincentivizes rolling. Except for the fact that you get to cast more spells per day, but that's not like that's not a good enough thing. I also think the math probably doesn't work out here, I would say, for rolling versus setting, because what if they set sometimes and roll sometimes?
With the limits, or
yeah, you want to set up a clear thing. Look at like what you want to do is you want to look at like sorcerer and sorcery points and how they convert sorcery points into spell slots, and consider like, I wonder if the way to design this actually is to give the R cubes essentially sorcery points.
Charges,
yeah.
Okay.
And then say rolling costs 1 charge, or you can spend charges based on the sides of the dice, right?
Oh yeah. So yeah.
Or something like that. So casting like a 6th level spell is 6 charges, right? That actually that
I like that.
Yeah, that might find that balance there that you're looking for. Yeah, that might find that balance there. But I still think that the spells that you've chosen, some of them need to change. I think the ones that stick out to me, I mean, basically, I like the flavor of all of them, right? I think you found like the red doing fire damage stuff seems just good to me. Fire
it's all
Shield
offensive.
Is the odd one out there. Yeah, the Fire Shield is the odd one out there, but I think it's close enough that it works.
Yeah.
Blue doing cold damage, again, it makes sense from a color perspective. Fog Cloud's okay. Misty Step just sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. The utility spells are.
Yeah, I would actually consider going the other direction, though. Obviously, Sleep Storm, Ice Storm, and Cone of Cold are all great spells to utilize. But I would consider looking at maybe some of the mid-level utility spells, and just having blue be the utility gem. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Let me pull up what I'm looking at here, because I really don't know. I'm just sort of saying things out of my butt, but I'll pull up spell chart list and look at 3rd level spells.
There's also an ENCT, a little bit of MTG inspiration. Just because it's hard to think about color without doing that. For me, it's Power Rangers and MTG. Exactly.
Yeah, of course. Red, blue, yellow, black, white. Okay, fair enough. I mean, it could be green instead of yellow if you wanted. I wouldn't object. Green is great.
I defaulted to primaries. That's the other thing. Primaries and black and white.
Well, color theory is such a weird thing.
It's fun.
I wouldn't worry too much about that.
But yeah, blue is
cyan, magenta. You know.
that
would work for me. So blue is sort of like control. I mean, if we default to magic, blue is also mind control, right? Yeah, that's not a horrible idea. I mean, okay. Oh, you know what you could do? For 3rd level, you could do blink. Blink kind of works, right? If we make blue motion, like movement and control from that element, like Fog Cloud, Misty Step, blink, see what else. Dimension Door. Ooh, I like that.
Ooh, yeah.
For 4th level. And then for, let's see, for 5th level, I'm just sort of glancing at things. Obviously, I'm going in alphabetical order because it's organized in alphabetical order. So I'm biased towards the top of the alphabet. So Biod, and Far Step. Yeah.
Is that 4th?
That's 5th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or things like that, right? Then we sort of like, it allows you to be more diverse than having like all, like, I don't think you really want to just fundamentally put like, I think the gems should feel more different from each other, right? Like you should be like, I think I like your idea about flavor, right? The red gem should feel like red, the blue gem should feel like blue. But if they all basically do damage spells, then I don't care whether I have red, blue, yellow, black, or white, right? But if the blue one is mobility, then suddenly I'm thinking, I could give that to a monk, and a monk would really appreciate it, right? If the black gem is mind control, I don't know. I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
If the black gem
Gios was on there on some point, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Then suddenly I'm like, ooh, what's a character that would be interested in controlling the minds of their enemies, right? That doesn't have that ability already. So that's interesting. Feely says, why not have different tiers of our cubes? So like first tier would have mainly cantrips and first level spells, and they get better as the tier of the item increases. Yes, I love that idea. I think that's a great idea. It certainly helps in some ways. I think though, Feely, that okay, so first of all, Feely, let me say, that is exactly how I would try to balance this item if I was trying to balance this item. But I think fundamentally what Spicy is trying to do here, what Marcus is trying to do here, is break the game, right? He's trying to essentially turn level 1, level 2 characters superheroes.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't disagree that that is in fact really exactly how you should balance this item. But I think that this item is I mean, fundamentally
inherently imbalanced almost.
You're trying to create a magical item that is designed to be what's the word? A game about like a game about it, right? Game about them. So I'd reconsider all the spells. I would try to make them all, like, I would try to make the 5 spells relate to each other very clearly, so they have a theme, right?
Yeah.
And then I would like hold to that theme, and then give the gems to different people, so that when someone's casting a spell, they may not know whether they're getting hold person, suggestion, or dominate person, but they know that they're affecting their mind.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I would also go for randomness. I just would.
Over setting.
I think randomness is more fun.
Yeah.
And I would give it. I would do both. I would give it charges and randomness. Ooh,
okay,
fun.
so it would be like if you roll a face, you would have to use that number of charges.
I think. Let me think about this. So I don't know what we're doing exactly yet because there's some more design here. But I think what I would start with is like, how powerful do you want these things to be? Obviously powerful, but how long should they go? Should they be able to cast their 5th level spell more than once?
Cast. Like
or roll if they roll.
Or roll. Okay. I want to say no, but like you said, at high levels of play, it's almost insignificant.
I mean, certainly, but like we can. I'm not going to worry about that right now because I think that like magic, honestly there are very few magical items that are impactful at both low and high levels of play. There are some. I think like specifically the rod. What's that rod?
Immovable rod.
The immovable rod, right, is one of the items that I'm incredibly comfortable giving to level 1 groups that I know they will keep and will still be impactful when they are level 20.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I've seen level 20 groups do amazing things with the immovable rod, and I've seen level 1 groups do amazing things with the immovable. Yeah, and I think that's like sort of so yes, I would consider that. But
So,
so I'm not that
yeah.
worried about it being applicable at all levels of play. I sort of think that this is supposed to be for low levels of high powered play, right? I think you're trying to tell a story here of I mean, I think the Power Ranger story, right? Kids getting in
Mhm.
over their head, right?
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
Or the like, I mean, in a different light, the Evangelion story, right?
Ooh,
Kids are the only
yeah.
ones who can control these giant robots or whatever. Um, and so they're trying to do it, but like the kids themselves are emotionally weak. In some ways, it's more of a storytelling problem than a D&D problem. In some ways, I think this is like um, given free reign to do anything that I wanted with this. My first thought would
Yeah.
be to change it entirely and turn the framework of this into a Powered by the Apocalypse game system, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's not that far off from
No, not at
Masks
all.
or City of Mists or something like that.
Yeah.
But like you could actually do that with Power Rangers. There might even be a Power Rangers PBTA type thing. Wouldn't surprise me. But in considering the D&D framework, what I think we would say is we'd say that okay, I think so. Here's what I would do. I would say first of all, I think I'd get rid of the spell slot 1 with
Yeah.
the Sky Cells,
Discuss off.
right? And I'd move everything up 1, and I'd come up with 6 spells because it's 6-sided die, right?
Okay.
And it would be level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and a level 6. So I would upgrade to. I would give you more. So I'm giving you more power. Hey, who knew that I was making you more powerful? And then I would say that your die has 10 charges per short rest, long rest, long rest. We'll say 10 charges per long
Yeah.
rest. I've never really loved the rolling to regain charges thing,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna
It's a little unwieldy.
not do that. But instead, we'll say 10 charges per long rest, and then from there, we'll say that casting a spell uses charges equal to the level of the spell when you roll it.
Yeah.
Okay, you like that so far?
So yeah, so if you cast a level 6, it's using up quite a bit of your
It's using up
charges of the
6/10
day.
of your stuff or 3/5.
Yeah.
And here's what I think we can get something interesting. I think there should be a consequence for going over,
Ooh, yeah.
right?
So you can go
So
over, but there's
right. So you go over, but something happens. Perhaps I don't know yet. The die dissipates in some way, or is diminished, or I don't want it to shatter because obviously the game's about having these things.
yeah.
Um, it becomes inert for a certain amount of time. But you see the point that I'm going for there, right? Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's what I'd do. That's what I'd start with. I'd look at all those things. That's how I would approach it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect.
So the big things I would say is first text is flavor text, second text is use text. Keep those paragraphs separate, and then separate the colors a little bit further. Right now, and part of this is not your fault. Part of it is D&D is a very damage focused game, so you focused on damage spells, which makes sense. Make sure that the spells within each color are more separate, so that different types of players are going to gravitate to different ones.
Yeah, in their like damage, utility, etc.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Get rid of the disguise self or make it part of the function of the item.
Yeah.
And then create a consequence for going beyond it. And then again, I think if you want to have a choice versus randomness, I'm just a fan of randomness because I like wild magic tables and things like that. You could even do that, actually. That's kind of interesting. If you go over, you can only go over once, but if you go over, you roll on the wild magic table. That's not
Oh
a
my
bad
god.
consequence.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
That's pretty flavorful and fun.
Some
So you sort of
dedicated
lose control.
yeah, some dedicated wild magic tables might be fun. Like one for red, one for blue, etc.
Yeah. Ooh, the dice turns into an angry Modron for 1d4 rounds if it goes. I love it.
That's good stuff.
I love Modrons. They're one of my favorite things, and in fact, I'm writing a homebrew campaign right now that uses Modrons.
They're fun, yeah. They're funny.
They're cute and also
Mhm.
fun, and horrifying, and all good things. So those, and then and that's sort of what those would be my big things. I think if you want to remove randomness, which I can understand if you want to, what I would do is I'd say like, rolling the die costs a number of charges equal to the spell level. Picking the spell costs a number of charges equal to the spell level +1, or +2, right?
Yeah.
So I could cast Burning Hands, but it would cost me 2 charges, or I could roll Burning Hands. It would cost me 1 charge.
Yeah, I
That's
like. Yeah,
mm,
I like randomness with these because it means you and your character are rolling a die at the same time. It's like a weird like meta like unification kind of thing going on. So I like randomness with these.
yeah, that's great. I love that sort of thing. Finding a way that the in game represent the out game
Hmm.
simultaneously. I don't mind if you want to add something like if 2 players or 3 players roll, maybe if like 2 players roll the same number on a die in the same turn, something cool happens. And I really don't mind something like a Yahtzee situation that's
Yahtzee.
insane, where like if
Yeah.
all players roll the same number on their die at the same time,
Yeah.
then Yahtzee, we win, or whatever.
Yeah.
Vorpal swords exist. Vorpal swords are awesome. That's fine too. Um, you know, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. So those are sort of my thoughts for that. Um, I love it. I love this. I kind of want to do more going over homebrew, but I do have all these questions that people have asked me, some in advance,
Awesome. Yeah.
and I think I'm gonna move and answer them now.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's see, how do I want to do this?
I
I should have thought about this before the thing. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna copy. Let's see. This is. Can you give me edit access on this RCube document, and then scroll down to the bottom? I'm just gonna paste a bunch of questions and scroll
Yeah.
through them, so that people
Um.
can see them on screen as I'm answering them.
Okay.
Since we're already here. Mhm. How's everyone in chat doing? Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support. All good people.
Let's see. I'm not sure how to do it with the link actually.
Oh, that's fine. I can also just start answering these questions. So I've got a whole list of questions from people. Some are intended to be silly, I'm sure, and some are serious. I will answer all of them best. I am going to tell you who they are from, just in case they're here in chat. The first set of questions I have, they are all from, and they are sort of grouped together because I copied and pasted them by person rather than by subject matter. And if I double answer some questions, well, multiple people ask me the same question, so multiple people will get answers. Maybe they'll be phrased differently. So the first set of questions I have are from Shoko Ice, who is in chat. Hi, Shoko. How you doing? Oh, excellent. Cool. Thank you. I'm just going to copy and paste all of these in here. And oh, I have to reload. There we go. I now have edit access. Okay. Beautiful. Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate all your help, and I appreciate you letting me use your document. Cool. Series of questions that I've copied in here. Okay. First set is from Shoko Ice. Shoko is in chat, last I checked. Hey, Shoko. How you doing? Bit late, but who needs a sleep schedule? Am I right? I do, Shoko. I need a sleep schedule. So Shoko's first question here is, what do you consider the worst design choices in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition? Oh boy, get off the bat with a loaded question. Okay, yeah. 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, I think it's a really great game. I want to start by saying that. I know that I promote a lot of other RPGs, and with good reason, because I think that D&D 5e gets a lot of people talking about it, and I'd rather talk about Burning Wheel and other things as well. But I clearly do love deeply 5th edition. I think it does a lot of things right, and a lot of people who critique 5th edition, I think, are overlooking a lot of the obvious good things that it does very, very clearly. So I love 5th edition, as evidenced by the fact that right now I'm running 3 streams of it on Twitch, where you can see me run 5th edition. So clearly, I wouldn't be doing that if I did not like a lot of things about it. What do I consider the worst design choices in 5e? From a play perspective, I think that the thing that interests me the most that they didn't cover in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is this idea that they have these things called bonds and ideals, and there's one more. Marcus, do you remember what the other one is? I forgot what it is. Flaws, ideals, and flaws. And like they make sort of a big deal about them, but they're not that impactful on the system. They tell you that you should pick them. They have, thank you, Feely. They tell you that you should have them. They tell you that you should pick them, and that they should inform your character and your character choices. But and I'm sure they do for many players, but they don't really have any mechanical impact. So if your flaw is I dislike, I am afraid of heights, right? There's a flaw. Matthew is afraid of heights. Okay, but if I am on top of a cliff looking down, it doesn't say that that flaw impacts anything. So that's sort of my biggest gripe. I really like things to have mechanical. I find that to be important to me. I like mechanical impact. And I like it when we mechanize things. There are other flaws, and there are plenty of other flaws that come up a lot. But from a play perspective, that's the flaw that bothers me the most. Other problems. I mean, I think that I've talked about this before on my on my Twitter. But I would certainly say that an important thing to remember about Dungeons and Dragons is that D&D is its history, and so a lot of choices that they make are rooted in the fact that things that they have done have been successful, and they are kind of trapped within that a little bit. And they can change things, but the rate of change is kind of a little slow, and certainly it's slower than many people want. And I think that's an interesting and complicated situation for the designers of D&D to be in. And we see a lot of problems with that. I think that particularly lately, we've seen a lot of talk about racism, and I think that's a really important thing to remember. That most of the fantasy world is rooted in a lot of sort of racist tropes. You know, dwarves in German literature are pretty clear allegories for Jewish people, and the tropes around them are not good. They are, greedy gem stealers who dwell in underneath the earth, and I don't know. And there's all sorts of like components of that. I don't think your world has to have those components, and I don't think you have to deal with those components. But I certainly think that the way in which the game hasn't dealt with those components frequently serves as a gateway off or a stopping point for many people. I've certainly talked to many BIMPOC people who are turned off by those elements of Dungeons and Dragons and see them as being a pervasive problem of racism throughout the game. And I can't fault them for that. I think they're broadly right about that. But that's not from a play perspective. From a dungeon master perspective, what's the biggest flaw in D&D? I think the biggest flaw in D&D is that they don't really teach you how to run games very well. The Dungeon Master's Guide is more about world building and the like, and I think that's great. I actually am a big fan of the Dungeon Master's Guide. I just don't think it really is a Dungeon Master's Guide. I think it's like a world building guide, and that's great. I think they could use some more stuff though. Next question from Shoko: what is your favorite spell from a DM perspective? Yeah, good question. I mean, I love legend lore because when a player casts legend lore, if you don't know legend lore, it's a spell that players can cast to get the history of an item. What is an item? What does it do? And more specifically, what's the history of the item? What has it done in the past? And whenever a player casts legend lore, I think, hey, they're interested in the world. So it's more like I like it because it's a positive feedback loop for me, right? It's a they are saying, hey, I'm curious about your world, and I'm like, oh really? I did design good. So from that perspective, I really like the spell legend lore. That's certainly one of my favorite spells. I like a lot of spells though. Disintegrate is super useful. It's fun to disintegrate people. Next up, is there any homebrew rule that you'd love to have as a core rule? Probably. I think the homebrew rule that I am most consistent on, I use it in all of my games as opposed to some of my games, is rounding in favor of the player. It's a dumb little thing, and I have no idea if it should be a core rule, but instead of rounding down always, I just like when an enemy successfully dex saves your fireball, your player's fireball, it feels bad. And like honestly, it's 1 damage, but I like it feels a little bit better to have that 27 have to 14 rather than 13. And then when you do vice versa with the players, it feels a little bit better to have that 27 and a half to 13 rather than 14. That is the rule that I've instigated in all of my games, and the one that like my players tend to have the most positive response to. Cool. Tearing through these. What's your favorite non-homebrew setting? So we'll assume Dungeons and Dragons official settings for this. And I like Dark Sun a lot. I like settings that put forth a problem, a situation, and then try to build a world where we deal with that situation, which is kind of funny because basically what I'm saying is I like sci-fi in my fantasy games. But that's sort of what I'm interested in. So Dark Sun, for those of you that don't know, because there's been no 5e Dark Sun supplement yet, although I'm sure it's coming at some point. Although they did a lot of Dark Sun in 4th edition, so maybe not for a while. But Dark Sun, the premise is that mages they discovered like the ability to use natural life as a resource for their magic, and as a result desolated the world. So the world is now massive deserts, and I just think that's cool. And I like deserts. Deserts are cool. I think people don't play enough in deserts in general. Deserts are fun. I have a whole campaign set in a desert country right now, although most it is deserts, and I like deserts. I like the flavor of deserts. And then what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Ooh, yeah, we have a local ice cream store here in San Francisco that makes really weird and unusual flavors that I love. I kind of love going there and getting whatever unusual flavor they have that day. They change it like every week, and that's my favorite thing to do. In terms of traditional flavors, I'm a huge fan of like mint cookie and mint chip, and also a fan of strawberry. And even better, those things together. Okay, next up, I've got questions from someone named Haven the Adventurer. What do you think are my most top 3 most influential RPG systems, excluding D&D? Yeah, sure, I can answer that. Burning Wheel, and Burning Wheel. I am obsessed with Burning Wheel. If you haven't heard me talk about Burning Wheel is the Burning Wheel. It's the RPG that has influenced me the most. It's not a quick learn, and it's not a quick understanding of things. But if you were here for my talk about bonds, flaws, and ideals, that is what Burning Wheel does really, really well. I really like a lot of the systems. The designer of Burning Wheel is a guy named Luke Crane. He designs RPGs. He's designed a bunch of great ones that are very interesting. And the whole idea behind Burning Wheel is that it is a system that is guys, feel free to ask questions in chat. Someone just messaged me, can I ask a question in chat? And so yes, feel free to ask questions in chat if you want. I'll answer those too. But Burning Wheel is a system where they really have that mechanized brilliantly. I really enjoy it. There's a lot of problems with Burning Wheel, obviously. There always are. But that is my favorite system. So the basic premise is that your character has beliefs and traits and instincts, and the beliefs, instincts, and traits all sort of are also how you gain experience. That's sort of a weird way of saying it, but that's how I'm going to say it. And I love a lot of things about that. First of all, beliefs. You write your beliefs, not the GM, not necessarily. You write your beliefs. The GM can help guide you. That's what they're there for. But basically, you write your beliefs, and your beliefs are how you want to impact the world. And then you gain experience for working towards impacting the world that way or impacting the world that way. So instead of gaining experience for, killing monsters or whatever, you can gain experience for anything that you believe is important, right? I want to figure out how demons enter into our world so that I can better understand banishing them. Great. Well, then you get mechanically rewarded for doing research, right? You can go do research and learn how that happens, get better at understanding how demons enter the world, and then you get experience points for that, right? There's a simple thing there, right? And then when you banish your first demon, right, you'll get even more experience points. So you get a persona point in that case, but don't worry too much about the details. But that's one of my favorite systems, and it's certainly one of the most influential on me. I first played it at a convention in a hotel room, and it stuck with me, but I don't think I really understood it yet. And I played it in a couple more conventions and a couple more hotel rooms, but didn't really have a. But it took a while for it to stick, and I was always very intimidated because people call it a very difficult RPG. But I started running it about a year ago now, a little over a year now. I don't know, Marcus, if you're in chat, you could. Marco, sorry, not Marcus, my bad. Marco, if you're in chat, you can tell me how long I've been running it for you guys. And running it has just been like the most inspiring and awesome experience ever. And I now steal more from Burning Wheel than anything else. I guess I copped out because I only gave one. Let's see. The other ones I would say are really important to me are Powered by the Apocalypse games or Apocalypse World. I think that's fairly common for people to say that that's been important to them. And I think with good reason. It sort of revolutionized how people look at RPGs. But Apocalypse World and Dungeon World and Masks and all those games, those have been really important because they sort of mechanize the story rather than mechanize ability, which I think is a cool idea. And then I guess on the flip side, I would say the GURPS second and third editions were hugely important to me because those were the RPGs I played growing up. I picked it up from my brother, and it was a weird choice, but it's what I picked up. Yeah, so he even says this might be current, historical, or very personal. Well, I think I covered all of those. For those who DM, how do you get past fear of running a game? That is a great question. How do you get past fear of running a game? Yeah, well, I am really lucky. I am very lucky in that my history is very weird and it's a little complicated, and I don't really consider all of it part of my history, which is a very weird thing to say too. I ran a little bit of 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons, but I had no idea what I was doing, and there was way too many people in the group. There was, I think, 14 people in the group, and I didn't want to DM, and I didn't really put any effort into it, and it really went badly. So that was my first dungeon mastering experience, and it more or less convinced me that I was never going to dungeon master again, ever, under any circumstances. But I wasn't really playing regularly. I would play at conventions with my brother and my brother's best friend and one of my best friends. The 4 of us would sort of go to conventions. The group fluctuated over the years, sometimes more, sometimes almost always more. But from 4 to like 12, I think was the largest year we ever did. But I'd basically play once a year at conventions for 4 days. I'd go to Gen Con, enjoy the best 4 days in gaming, which I still find a hilarious slogan. Or I'd go to, Origins or whatever. My experience was that like I would go there and I would play and I have such a good time. And then I would come home and I wouldn't play RPGs for a year. Basically, that was my experience with it. But one time I just came home and I thought, yeah, I'd like to play RPGs. And I was in a debate club at the time, a online debate club that was founded to sort of, I don't want to discuss this, cut through some of the right wing, left wing rhetoric, and sort of get to like the core of ideas. I don't know if it really worked, but it was really fun for a while. And I just mentioned in a silly conversation off topic, yeah, I'm thinking about like I'd like to play some more role playing games. And one of the people in there just said, who I had talked to before but didn't really know, said, "Hey, we just started a new D&D 5e group. We start tomorrow. Do you want to come? It's in the East Bay." And I'm like, well, okay, sure. So I went, and I started playing with that. A couple months later, or a little bit into it, the DM mentioned that like he was not going to be the full-time DM. He wanted to have rotating dungeon masters, and he just sort of told me that I was next. And I said, no, absolutely not. And he said, yeah, you're next. I said, no, I'm not. And he said, yes, you are. And so I started doing some research. I found some people. I was terrified of running games. And I found a lot of the usual suspects. I found Matt Colville, right, who was a very big influence on me. I found the Alexandrian, who was a very big influence on me as well. I found a bunch of other people, but those are the 2 that sort of that I've stuck with the longest. Angry GM didn't really stick, but I took some of his advice. And they talked about game running in very clear ways. And how did I get over my fear? I think a really important thing to remember is that fear and excitement are actually very close emotionally. And so if you can bring that together, if you can understand that fear and excitement are the same thing, or very close to each other, and just start running, then you'll start getting better. I think it also helps to be run for friends. I don't recommend your first time being in public, just in general. I recommend just doing it with some friends. Try something small, right? When I first started, I'm like, okay, I'll try, but I prepped like essentially a one shot. Although it took a couple of sessions because I over prepped because I was new, of course. Um, and I was addicted. I was hooked after one night. Um, so how do you get over fear of dungeon mastering? Breathe deeply and start doing it. I know that's not the most helpful advice in the world, but it's really the best I got. Breathe deeply and start doing it. That's definitely where I'm at and what I believe in. I've wanted to do it for so long, but I feel like I don't have enough experience or skill to give the players a good experience. I doubt that's true. I'm sorry, I don't know you, Haven the Adventurer, but I really profoundly doubt that's true. Most people are so excited to be part of a story. And even if you are not the best, you will get better. And even if you are not the best, your players will get better. They will have a good time. Um, yeah, it's for the love of the game, and you will have a lot of fun. That's what I have to say. Okay, on to the next question. From Fred. Hey, Fred. Hope you're doing well. Hope Brazil is okay. What do you think is the biggest flaw of Dungeons and Dragons 5e, and how do you think it can be fixed? Yeah, I'll try and answer. I'm probably gonna get this question a lot, just guessing, because I talk a lot about other systems and people are curious about D&D, so that's the most common question. I'm gonna try and answer it a different way each time, or about a different thing each time, so I don't just keep saying bonds, ideals, and flaws aren't mechanized. Yeah, let's talk about tactics. I think that one of the things that D&D does really well is that it sits sort of in the middle of games, and I think that's kind of great. It's actually, some people are critical of it, but I think it's a great entry point because you can use it to sort of get to more tactical games, games like Pathfinder, Lighthander, or you can use it to get to more narrative games, games like Powered by the Apocalypse systems and things like that. I don't think it does either of those things perfectly, but I think it does both of those things well enough that it can get you there. For me, right now, my experience with Dungeons and Dragons is that I wish that it was a little bit more tactical, which is weird because I'm a more narrative interested person. But I feel like the action economy in fifth edition, and they hate that word, and there's a reason they hate that word. It makes a lot of sense. They hate that phrase. But the action economy isn't quite tactical enough for me. I would love to see more opportunity to mess around with that a little bit. I think the Pathfinder second edition system, I haven't actually run Pathfinder second edition yet, although I really, really want to. Yeah, the Pathfinder second edition system. Oh, good night, bumblebees. Sleep well, Emily. I totally understand. But the Pathfinder system of I think they have like 3 action points, and different types of actions cost different amounts of action points. And that allows you to sort of mix and match things in cool ways. I love the idea that like concentrating on it, casting a spell might cost 2 or 3 action points, but concentrating on it only costs 1. So you can concentrate on it and spend the other 2 casting another spell, right? That feels like impactful and interesting to me. Or you can sacrifice all of it for like super movement and focus on getting from point A to point B. So I don't know. I feel like there's ways that we can improve tactics in D&D and make it just slightly more slightly more impactful. That would be my big suggestion there in terms of what is the biggest flaw of D&D 5e and how do I think it can be fixed. How do I think it can be fixed? Write more rules for tactics. I think it's sort of a weird thing. I don't know if it can be fixed actually at this point. I feel like 5e has sort of found its calling as being like people want maps or crave maps, but the game is designed for theater of the mind. That's sort of where it sits right now, and I think that's fine. I don't know if it can be fixed. How can it be fixed? Play by diversifying your playing experiences to play other games. That's what I would really say. I think that's yeah, I think that people who play D&D 5e tend not more than other games to play other games, and I think by playing other games, you'll actually enjoy your D&D experiences more because you won't find them lacking things. You'll find them reinforced by awesomeness, by the things that D&D does well. So that's what I would say to that. What is an aspect of older editions that you liked and missed in 5e? Sure. So my knowledge of older editions is lower than it should be, although I am interested in them. I think I'll answer this twice. In 4th edition D&D, which I played a fair amount of, I like the tactical nature of that. I like the fact that there's so many different moves for fighters to do. I liked those things being very impactful. A lot of people didn't like the uniformity of 4e. I kind of liked it. I think it didn't work super well at low levels, which is weird. But I really like that sort of uniformity of experience, and I thought that the way you built characters in that game was a lot of fun. And it led to some really cool things. I like minions from 4th edition and bloodied from 4th edition. Obviously, those are all things that I still use in my 5th edition games. From older editions of D&D, though, what I would say is that I really that in older editions of D&D, there wasn't like a thieves tools check to find a trap. I've always been a little bit dubious of this, right? I enter the room and I roll thieves tools to find a trap. Okay, fine, because the rules say that you can do that. But I always no, I search the floor for unlevel ground to see if there's a pressure plate, or I check the ceiling to see if there's a hole, or slides. I poke the floor with a 10-foot pole, right? Poking the floor with a 10-foot pole is a meme, obviously, but it's a true thing, right? In old editions of D&D, characters would wander around with 10-foot poles, poking the floor and the walls to see if like there were holes in them, they would fall, because there was no way for them to know until you found it. And I sort of like that. I like the rule of automatic solve is what I would call it. I don't know if that's actually what I would call it, but that's what I'm calling it right now. I have no idea if that's what I would call it. It's what I'm calling it right now. The rule of automatic solve, the idea of like if the player solves something, then their character solves it, right? That's something that's sort of frowned upon now, because like, oh, but I have a 7 intelligence as a character, so my character wouldn't know these things. Okay, fine, but I think like you know these things, so let's just into it. At least that's sort of how I think. If you know that oozes like dirty, slimy areas, or are created by dirty, slimy areas, then your character probably knows it too. And like if you're careful in those areas, then the ooze probably doesn't surprise you, right? That's what I would say. Yeah, that's what I would say. So the rule of automatic solve, right? If you find something, then it doesn't matter if there's these tools checks. If you break the door, you don't need to pick the lock, right? That sort of thing. From Feely. Feely's another one of players who is also here. Hi, Feely. How you doing? Hope you're well. What is your favorite class for flavor? What is your favorite class mechanically? What is your favorite pre-made campaign to run? When did you start playing D&D? Do you like Unearthed Arcana? And if yes, what's your favorite Unearthed Arcana? And have you based any in-game event on real-life war stories? Example, Attack of the Dead Men. Okay, cool. I will answer all of those. What is my favorite D&D class for flavor? I am a wizard fanatic. I think wizards are great. I think I like the idea of studying giving you power, because I study very hard. I am a nerd. Hi, I'm nerdy. Nerdy. Yes, I am a nerd, and I love the flavor of studying for power. I think that's great. I think wizards are a particularly well-designed class, and I think that people underrate them because people are into sorcerers for some reason and warlocks for some reason. I think that wizards are just better and cooler, and they make more sense. And I just like intelligent space casters in general. So that is my favorite class for flavor. What is my favorite class mechanically? Probably the fighter. Another one that I think is underrated, but I think the fighter and with feats, because I believe in feats. Not that that's been a question yet, but I believe in feats. I believe the fighter with feats has a lot of diversity of playstyles within it, and is a lot of fun. And again, is underrated. But I don't know. I like variety. if I had a team of all fighters and wizards every time I ran a game, I don't think I'd be very happy. Like paladins, I think paladins are cool. Like warlocks, I think warlocks are cool. I like druids. I think druids are cool. I like barbarians. I like artificers. I like clerics. Actually, that's not true. I don't really like clerics. There you go. Hot take. Matthew doesn't like clerics. Um, headline: Matthew hates all clerics, and cleric players are evil. Okay. Sorry, just messing around here. Okay. What's your favorite pre-made campaign to run? Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't run them all. The one I have run the most by far is Dragon Heist. I've run it, I think, 11 or 12 times now. Um, and I can kind of do it in my sleep. I'm actually testing that theory right now. I'm running it without referring to the book right now for a group, just for the sake of seeing if I can do it. I'll refer to it if I need to, but I am in the middle of running it for a group without checking the book. And I think it's a lot of fun to run. I don't think it's the easiest campaign to run. It's really great for beginning players. It's not as good for beginning DMs, but I do really like running that campaign. My favorite one to run, I don't know. I've been kind of surprised by Tomb of Annihilation. I started it being really excited about it, and then I got into it and I was less excited about it. But now my group that I'm running through it right now, which conveniently Feely, who asked this question, um, is in a place, and I just sort of they found very mild spoilers in the campaign. You're looking for a hidden city, the lost city of Omu. You don't know that for a little while, but you're in a hidden city, but you're looking for that. End spoilers. End spoilers marker, but whatever. And I think that part of the campaign is shockingly well designed. I'm kind of surprised. I wasn't expecting it to be so well designed, but it has kind of blown me away. Essentially, you get there, and there are, including the players, I think 5 or 6 different factions, all of which have different pieces of the puzzle, sort of, and are all working towards the same or similar goals, but with different or similar outcomes, but different goals. And it's just like for me, it's like just DM pleasure to have all to like figure out how all these moving pieces interact with each other, and I think that's just really exciting to see. I just love putting it all together. Where are the Red Wizards of Thay at this point? Where is Rasen C? Where is the rest of the Yuan-Ti? What about what about the Kobold faction? What about the little frog people faction? Whatever the Grung. What about the Grung faction? Where is everyone? What do they know, and how does it all fit together? So I think like that part of the campaign in particular is just brilliantly well designed. I also will say that I was kind of impressed by the emergent storytelling that occurred in our wandering through Omu, wandering through Chult. There are problems with the campaign, right? I want to preface that. I should have prefaced it. It is a little bit. Nope, wrong word. It's certainly based in a side of Faerun that is rooted heavily in racism against South American cultures. And they try to address it, and maybe kind of do, but not certainly not good, certainly not well enough. But I think that, but I think from a game design perspective, that campaign has really impressed me. The hex crawl really kind of works better than I thought it would. You sort of have to commit to it in a way that I think is great. And then so the hex crawl works better than I thought it did. Then the city crawl works better than I thought it did. And I'm betting that the dungeon crawl at the end, which is epic and famous, it's a remake of second edition's Tomb of Horrors, is going to be great as well. I've started doing my research for it. I haven't finished doing my research for it because my players aren't quite there. But yeah, I've started doing my research for it, and I don't know. We'll see if it lives up to the original. I don't know if it'll live up to the original Tomb of Horrors, which is a famously hard and difficult campaign that several times actually instructs the DM to attempt to trick the players. There's a fake boss, and who looks like the boss, thinks they're the boss, and acts sort of like a boss, and is relatively powerful. And the players defeat this boss. It was not easy. The book actually tells the dungeon master, At this point, you should close the book and tell the players that they have completed Tomb of Horrors, right? If they are stupid enough to believe you, then let them believe it, which I think is just such a horrible and funny idea. There's a bunch of fake outs in that campaign, and I kind of love that. When did I start playing Dungeons and Dragons? Yeah, so I actually didn't start with Dungeons and Dragons. I started with GURPS. GURPS was the first. GURPS Second Edition was the first RPG I played. It's generic universal role playing system, and I started with that. Oh, when I was young, I don't know. My brother was into it, and my brother is about 8 years older than me, 7.5 years older than me, and so he had the GURPS books around. I started like the first time I remember like trying to look at them at all. I was in kindergarten, and I brought one to school, and my best friend sort of spent time looking through it, mostly at the pictures and the art, obviously. But that's when we first started trying to engage with RPGs at all. So we did a fair bit of that, but we never really ran and we never really played. We just build characters and build worlds, and then move on. Right? Build characters, build worlds, move on, and then build vehicles and build worlds and move on, and then all sorts of build things. But that was definitely my first introduction to it. I didn't really play RPGs at all until I started going to conventions when I was 20, 21, 19, 20, 21. It's like 12 years ago. And I didn't really start playing regularly until 2015, 2016. So I really don't have that long a history actually playing regularly. And I started running games about 6 months after that, 4 months after that. So I don't really have a long history of playing regularly, but I have a long history being aware of the hobby, as it were. So that's that. And when I started playing regularly, it was 5e. I did again. I tried to run a 4e game, but I really didn't try that hard, and it went badly. And that would have been in 2013, 2012, something like that. Do I like Unearthed Arcana? Sure. Why not? Unearthed Arcana is really just them experimenting and trying new things. Sometimes I think it works. Sometimes I think it doesn't work. Some of them I think are OP. Some of them I think are underpowered. Sometimes I think that they don't follow through with the consequences of their actions. Like there was a Ranger Unearthed Arcana recently that came out, and I looked at it and I thought this is essentially the best healing that they've ever released, and they're giving it to the Ranger. Self heal, but still struck me as like, was it self heal? Well, no, I mean it's self heal, but it struck me as like this is a fine thing to give the Ranger at level 6. Giving them this at level 1 seems a little overpowered. But yeah, I like yes, I like people experimenting. I like people pushing the bounds. I'm excited to see. I like. Let's see, what's my favorite right now? I'm enjoying the Psionic Unearthed Arcana. I think it probably can be better. I have a couple players. I've got a Soul Knife and a Psychic Warrior in 2 of my campaigns right now, and they're both enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. Yeah, that's sort of the one that I'm most into right now. I like some of the Unearthed Arcana that are just corrections, right? I think that like the oh man, one of the best ones I think is the Cleric Corrective Unearthed Arcana, which says that at level 8 you can either have Potent Cantrip or Divine Strike, your player's choice. So it doesn't force half the classes to get Potent Cantrip and half the classes to get Divine Strike. And like, okay, but I'm a caster character, but I want to play a Tempest Cleric, but they get Divine Strike or whatever. I don't remember which one it is. You can just pick which one, and like that just seems like a bug fix to me more than anything else. And so yeah, I like that. Yeah, so I'm into the Psionic Unearthed Arcanas. I'm a fan of Psionics in general. My favorite characters in the X-Men are always, or in Marvel comics are always like the X-Men, and usually Jean Grey and Phoenix, Rachel Summers and Phoenix, and Emma Frost and Professor Xavier. I like Professor X. I'm not an anti-Professor X. I'm a fan of Professor X. Yeah, so that's I don't know. They just kind of keep moving, and they're all just experienced things. Have you ever based an in-game event on real-life war stories? Example: the Attack of the Dead Men. So for those of you that don't know, the Attack of the Dead Men was a event, I believe, in World War One, where people, content warning, grotesque, violent, and horrible things. I'll wave my hands when it's over. People used lots of gases. They dropped lots of gases, and they severely injured a lot of people, causing them to have like boils and blood and burns all over their faces and twisted. Made them look horrifying, but they survived, and then they attacked. And so there's a lot of like mythology around this. Is like they actually were zombies attacking. And content warning. Do I base things on real life war stories? Sure. Yeah, sometimes. Game of Thrones is very loosely based on the War of the Roses. I don't really plan events though in that way. Um, those are more likely to come from my players. Something like that is more likely to come from my players than from me. Um, yeah, I'm unlikely to like even have a say in that situation. Uh, that would be something that my players would cause to happen. But I do base things on real history, right? I'm not. I don't want to give too many spoilers because there's some of the people in these campaigns are in chat right now. But my Sagas of the Shimmering Sea stuff has roots in history. um, although sort of through a secondary source. I think that my biggest influences tend to be science fiction and literature, particularly for my fantasy games. I steal a lot from sci-fi television shows and sci-fi novels and sci-fi games. I ran a whole game that was based off of Shadowrun Dragonfall, the Shadowrun second computer game that they released. I just basically reskinned that for a fantasy world and ran it, and that was a lot of fun. So that tends to be. I tend to get my. So first of all, I don't really do events like that because it's my players' job who would do that. So it's really up to them whether those sorts of things happen. And then secondarily, yes, I do steal things from history, but I'm more likely to steal from literature or games or TV shows or movies. More likely to steal from other stories. Just to give the framework and then let people play with it as they want. Next up from Proc, what do you do to make your worlds feel more alive? Yeah, good question. What do I do to make my world feel more alive? I don't know. I feel like you guys can answer that better than me if you're a player in my games. But I guess let's see. What are the big things I do to make my worlds feel more alive? I think the most important thing is that people are not static, right? There's this funny thing in video games. Good night, Felix. Sleep well. Thanks for hanging out. As long as you could. How do I make my worlds feel more alive? So I think that, like in video games, one of the things that you see is static world. You see this a lot, particularly in classic games because it's what they can handle. But even in modern games, right? People aren't doing things. You are doing things. You are the agent in the world. You are the only one with agency, and so you are the only one who's impacting things, right? If you look at a Final Fantasy game, right? For an example, if we look at Final Fantasy 6 or something like that. Or Final Fantasy 4. Final Fantasy 4 is easier. No, Final Fantasy 6, right? People literally say the same voice line, no matter what. No matter what, until you do something to cause the world to change, and then they might respond to it with a different voice line. So it's not a lot of there's not a lot of options there. So for me, the most important thing to make a world feel alive is that other people besides the players have agency, and that's really what the DM's job is, from my perspective. That's the most important thing we have. We have the capability of providing agency to others. Now, obviously, if we provide agency to everyone in the world, the game gets bogged down. That's too much of a problem. It becomes a mess. So instead, what I recommend is what I do is I think of like villains. Villains are usually the most important part of any game that I'm running. I want a big bad guy, right? I want that big bad guy to have motivation, something that they want. And I want that big bad guy to have a reason that they do not have that. Then I want them to have resources, right? What can they spend to attempt to get this thing that they do not have? And then I want a fifth thing that I tend to want lines of communication. How do they get their information? Where are they getting their information from? Those tend to be, if I have those 5 things and I put it on a villain, and then I just put my party in between the villain and the thing that they want, right? Then suddenly the world feels alive because the villain can respond to the players, right? It's the opposite of a book. The written word cannot change based on the reader, right? That's impossible. It's already on the page. I can. So it's my job to take what you are saying and respond to it. So it becomes important for me to understand, how are the villains getting their information, right? Do they have a spy network? Okay, who works for it? Do they have? Are they just reading the newspaper? Okay, is what the players are doing important enough to make it into the newspaper, right? Those sorts of things. So I need to know how they get their information, and I need to know what they want. Um, what are some easy examples of this? Okay, so the players get an overpowered magical sword. Cool, done, easy. This magical sword is something that the enemy, the big bad guy, wants. Okay, so the big bad guy then wants this magical sword. It would be nice to know why. Um, so I think we'll attach a prophecy to this magic sword. This magic sword is involved in the destruction of a greater evil. Ooh, there we go. Now we've got a good twist here. Um, so the players have this magical sword. Obviously, they want this magical sword because it's a powerful magical sword, and they don't like this big bad guy, so they don't want to give it to them. Right? They don't like this person who's trying to get this magical sword. They don't maybe know about the greater evil coming down the line. So the big bad guy has a desire. They want the magic sword. Fine. We're keeping this relatively simple, obviously. They have resources. Probably they've got an army, a couple of generals, maybe some lieutenants. Maybe they've got a demon in service to them or something like that. Great. Uh, how do they get the magic sword? Well, they're going to spend their resources to do so, right? Maybe they're like, oh, I've got a demon bound to me. I don't know where the magic sword is, but I can send the demon, and the demon will track it down for me. Great. Now we know that there's a demon after the party. So again, we start to see the world becoming more alive. So the players defeat the demon somehow, probably using the magic sword. And now they know that it's after sword, so it gives them an incentive to investigate things. It creates a dynamic system, right? And that's actually one of the things I was talking about earlier, the campaign Waterdeep Dragon Heist. One of my favorite things about that is running that as not with one villain, but with four villains. There are four different villains in the book, all with pretty clear and effective motivations. But they encourage you to pick one and stick with it. But my God, or they don't encourage that. They suggest that, but then they say, hey, if you want, you could do all four. It's so much more fun with all four. I think they screwed that up for the first several games that I ran. But like having four people who are interacting with each other as well as the players, and trying to manipulate the players and get them on their side and things like that, it's just it is just so much fun to see that happen. So just think through your villains first. That's usually the most important thing. But villain, what they want, what resources they have, how they're going to try and get it. Those are some of the big key things, and how they get their information is important. I have found to be important. But then you can do that with good guys too, right? Give that the queen has things that she wants. The good queen, I don't know, whatever. So that's what I would say I do to make my worlds feel more alive. More than anything else, I think that's the most important thing. If the world is dynamic, it will feel alive to your players. Next up, from Henry. Who is your favorite villain in Dungeons and Dragons and why? Yeah. So I am not a super big fan of Faerun. I like Faerun fine, but it feels very generic Fantasyland to me, and that doesn't super excite me. From that perspective, most of the villains in Faerun I don't love, even though I was just talking about how much fun Waterdeep Dragon Heist is. I'm not like super invested in the Castellantis' villains. I'm not super invested in Xanathar's villain, although I do think having a beholder with a pet goldfish is hilarious and adorable. I'm not super invested in Manshoon, and I'm not super invested in Jarlaxle. Don't really love. Yeah, I don't think I love any of the published villains. People love Strahd. I think Strahd is very difficult to run. I've run most of it once. I've played most of it once, and I ran all of it once. And I've run a one-shot version where Strahd must die tonight, right? Type thing. I don't love Strahd. I don't know if that's a story that I'm capable of really telling well. I have there's a lot of problems with it. It's supposed to be and is fundamentally a story about the problems of sexism and ego and toxic masculinity. I don't know if I'm really the best person to run it though, and I don't feel like I've ever really Like I've had great moments in Strahd campaigns, and I've pulled the rug out of my players in great times, and it's been a lot of fun. And Strahd is a really great conniving person, but I wouldn't say I love him as a villain, right? I love Darth Vader as a villain. You know, Darth Vader is a great villain to me. Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's a great villain. Or Kuvira, actually, from The Legend of Korra, just to branch out a little bit. I think she's a great villain. But I don't think I love any of the published ones. Yeah, I guess. Ooh, okay. This is not a D&D published adventure, but it is a published story. Dragonlance is a series that D&D released, and the Dragonlance world is a lot of fun. Certainly, I grew up reading a lot of Dragonlance novels and enjoyed them. So I think the third full series has Mira, I think is her name. Mira. Well, it tells you how much I care about her as the full villain, as the big villain, and I really like her. She's a cleric of the one true God, because clerical magic has disappeared from the world except for her clerical magic, and it's a twist at the end that you discover that the one true God is Takhisis, and like her journey as being like trying to do good in the world through the goddess of evil, as the one true God. I found that journey really interesting and fun. So that would be that's my favorite D&D published villain that I could think of offhand. Also Raistlin Majere, but calling Raistlin a villain is a stretch, as everyone knows. How is it running after everything remotely, logistically, artistically, etc.? After everything, for those of you that don't know, is my new music ensemble. I'll talk about this very briefly. I run a new music ensemble. You may not know this, but in addition to being a game running person who runs things on Twitch, I also am a music teacher and a classical musician. And I run a new music ensemble called After Everything. We have a lot of fun. Yeah, it sucks running it remotely. Logistically, artistically, it all sucks. I feel very impoverished right now in terms of art. And I think that for me personally, being locked inside a house, not that you're locked, but being stuck inside a house basically, and not having a world to engage with feels very dehumanizing. I feel cut off from the world in stupid ways. I used to work in coffee shops all the time, and now I can't. And I'm glad that I can't, and I think it's a good thing. But it does feel, but it has made me sort of come to the realization that our humanity and our body is in the world. That's sort of the most important thing. It's in the world. And so, from that perspective, not being able to be in the world is dehumanizing. So I don't really know artistically what I'm trying to say. I am doing things. I'm writing a piece right now, composing a piece of music that is designed to be done over Zoom. It's supposed to have aleatoric components in it so that it can be done at social distance without needing to even get people in the same place. And I think that's kind of fun and cool, but I don't really know what I'm saying with it yet. So it's not really going super well. And logistically, I don't know. I'm coming up with some cool projects here and there, but I don't know if I'm saying anything yet. And so I don't know how it is. It doesn't feel good though. We can't, our quarantine sort of started, actually quarantine started the day after one of our concerts was supposed to be, and so we actually canceled our concert because we basically got notifications that no one was going to come, and we're like, oh well, we should obviously cancel. But we did all the rehearsals and it was canceled. It sucked. What is my favorite dish to make during the quarantine? Mostly I am doing sugar and chocolate right now because everything sucks, so I'm baking a lot of sugar and chocolate. So yeah, I don't know, I made a chocolate pudding cake the other day. It was pretty good. Horde or Alliance? Thrall is the correct answer to that question. From Melee, what system would you recommend for a brand new Dungeon Master? Ooh, that's a great question. Brand new. Well, I mean, I think that I think I would recommend. I mean, I think flavor matters a lot, but I think what I would recommend is actually. I think I would recommend Dungeon World, because I think that the chapter in Dungeon World on how to be a game runner is one of the best chapters I've ever seen on how to run a game. So if you're trying to learn how to run a game, I would recommend reading that. Even if you're going to run a different game, I would still recommend reading that. But I think it's one of the easiest guidelines. Now, there's a couple of counterintuitive leaps in that, so I'm not entirely certain that I'm right. But I think that's probably a good idea. I also think that D&D, like, D&D is a great game at onboarding players, and it could be a great game for onboarding dungeon masters. It's not right now, but I feel like there's a lack of that in the world, but we might see that at some point. And so if someone releases, if D&D, preferably Wizards releases a good book on how to run games, then I think that like D&D could become a good onboarding system. What are your top 3 systems and why? Let's do Burning Wheel again. Burning Wheel is the best system because it's the best system, and it talks a lot about things that are hugely important in terms of character growth. It's a system that's about character growth and character struggle to grow. I'll say Burning Wheel again, and that's why Burning Wheel. And then I'll say, let's see, what else do I have right here behind me? Sorry, I'm looking behind me because I have games back here that are. I have 2 shelves of RPGs here, and I'm just going to look through them briefly. Do I have? I want to recommend this game. This is called Questlandia. It is a DM-less RPG. It's a cooperative storytelling game. This is one of the most impressive books I've ever seen formatted in my entire life. And I know that like praising formatting is a weird thing to do, but the way this whole book is laid out is on. Let's see if I can line this up. So on this page, there are rules. On this page, there's a sample of play that happens to be applicable to these rules. And sorry, you can't hear me when I have the thing in front of me. So on those pages, there are rules on one side and sample of play on the other side. And they keep that up through the entire book, and it's one long sample of play that follows the rules as you go. And I think that's just one of the coolest design things ever. The company that designed it, it's made by Hannah Schaffer and Evan Rowland. I met them recently at a convention. And it is mind-blowing to me that they made this so well. And I think it's a really fun game, so I'll recommend that. And then the other game that I think is my favorite that I talk about a lot is a game. This is not a game for everyone at all, but it's called 10 Candles. It's a narrative horror RPG in which the characters know at the beginning that they're going to die. So it's the story of their death. And I think that the way that game uses drama and the mechanics to reinforce the drama is freaking awesome. So there you go. I'll say that. Do you ever bring rule sets from other systems to D&D, and how often does that work, if yes? Ailey, that is an excellent question. I hope you're here. I doubt you are here because you are elsewhere in the world. Nope, doesn't look like you're here. We've got 8 people here. Ailey, yes, I often use rule sets from other systems to D&D, and 30% of the time it works. That's not really a good answer to the question, but I think that's broadly about right. I often bring things from other rule systems in. About 30% of the time it works. Usually you can adjust it to keep it working over time. My favorite that I will say is, shocking to no one, bringing in the Burning Wheel belief system into Dungeons and Dragons. One of my groups, my Monday night group, the Assassination of Primarch Michael E. Black Eyes, starring awesome human beings, Health Pack Stream, and Ghost Roll, and Fey Rights, and Small Cactus Friend, sometimes known as Apostatively. That game, we've incorporated the belief system from Burning Wheel into our leveling system, and I am so thrilled with how that is working mechanically right now. I was kind of doubting that it would work mechanically, but the results are in, and it's working great, and I love it. It feels good. They create beliefs about the world. They enact those beliefs, they get a point. They don't enact those beliefs, they don't get a point. Bye, Shoko. Sleep well. It's 3 a.m. in Germany, so go home. I totally understand it, but that's just freaking brilliant. Yes, so that's my favorite example, but I steal from other games too. One thing I'm stealing from the games I don't want to share yet, because one person that I know is watching the stream because he is producing this stream is Spicy Curry Breath, also known as Marcus, also my Thursday game. And I have stolen a mechanic that's going to come into play in my Thursday game from another system, but it's a surprise and I don't want him to know. Do you have basic rules of thumb for creating house rules that aren't broken? Yes. The basic rule of thumb is find the... Oh, thank you for the subscription, Joko. That's so great. Um, find the closest corollary rule. If you're designing a magic item, find magic items that work similarly or spells that work similarly. If you are designing a um, agreement system between the players, find agreement systems that work. Whatever you're trying to design, find something that is already in the game and compare it, right? One thing that's interesting is when you look at um, homebrew classes in particular, there are sort of two types of them. The first type is much more common, which is very weird, but they're deeply underpowered classes that are rooted in that are rooted in what other classes can do, right? So they'll be like a hybrid of a couple of things, but they'll just basically be weaker and they won't really have a clear class identity. It's worth pointing out that a lot of the basic class abilities, right, are really broken. They're designed to feel powerful, right? The D&D 5e wants you to feel powerful. So like sneak attack does a lot of damage and it's pretty easy to trigger, right? It should feel a little broken. There's other things that are balancing it. It's the thing that rogues do. Barbarians, yeah, why don't we give a class the ability to take half damage from everything? Okay, like if you propose that in a homebrew group, they would say that's too powerful. But it's the barbarian's baseline ability, or fighters. Oh man, giving someone 2 actions in a turn, like that's so powerful. And like people's response to that would be, that seems like you're breaking the rules of the game a little too much. So I always want to be careful with that. But uh, yeah, so things can be powerful, but you want them to be distinct, right? And you want them to feel different from each other. I had a friend share their homebrew class with me, and basically they had they had a class, and it was its own thing technically, but basically it had sneak attack, although it wasn't called sneak attack. It didn't have the same triggers, and it scaled a D8 rather than D6. And I just looked at that and I'm like, this is just stepping on the rogue's class identity. So you want to find your own quote unquote broken thing to do, um, and then compare it sort of in power level. But yeah, for my basic rule of thumb for creating house rules that aren't broken is look for things that are working and in other parts of the game and steal from them. See if you can find a way to balance it roughly the same way. Yeah, that's my general advice. Also, I think that a lot of house rules are designed to balance things that are already problems. So don't be stuck in one place. Be willing to edit and revise things as you go. Wako sends in some questions. Hey, Wako, you are not here because you are running a game, but I'll answer your questions anyway. So here's a point of discussion. Where do you think is the sweet spot between sandbox and railroad styles, and does that change by game system? Similarly, what are your thoughts on rule as written or rule as intended and the rule of cool? Lot of thoughts there to go into. I guess I would start by saying that I think that people see a larger difference between sandbox and railroad than I do. I think that both, like some people would say that you always want the most sandboxy game possible. Other people would say you always want like a tracks. Very few people would say that these days. It's not popular opinion. I don't know. I think you want goals. I think you want characters that are excited to engage in the world, and that means that they have things that they want to do, and that means you're giving them hooks, and hooks lead to like a direction, but there should always be options as to how to approach those things. So I think there's a lot going on there, but that's I feel like it's a whole topic for like an hour-long discussion. I'd love to like chat with some people about it, to like really get like a back and forth going. But basically, I think that like a railroad, like a straight ahead story where everything is obviously leading to the next, is what the end result should feel like, even though along the way you are making impactful choices, right? I think the problem with a sandbox is that choice, like a true sandbox, is that choices aren't impactful. And the problem with a true railroad is choices aren't impactful. So both of those things are problems. You want to have choice and you want it to be impactful. That's really what I care about. That's what I want to see. I mean, we can even do a quick example. You walk down a hallway, and there's a T intersection. You can go left or you can go right. Which do you go? Okay. Well, the railroad would know what room you're going to get to, whether you go left or right. Okay. The sandbox gives you no information about way to turn. So you're making choices based off. So you're not making an impactful choice because you don't know what to do in the sandbox because there's no information about where to go or why you would choose one way or over the other way. And the railroad sets you up for there's no impactful choice because both are the same direction. Actually, you're just lying to the players. So what you want to do instead is you get to a T intersection. You look down the right side and you see sigils that represent demonic forces. And you look down the right side and you get a smell, the scent of undead. Great. Now we have a choice. Do we want to fight demons? Do we want to fight undead? Maybe not the most impactful choice in the world, but still a choice, right? If you have a paladin in your party, you know that either's fine. But if you have someone who only does necrotic damage, they know they don't want to fight the undead because the undead are immune to necrotic damage. So that's how I would phrase that. Similarly, what are your thoughts on rules as written, rules as intended, and the rule of cool? I believe in rules as written. Um, I think we should. I think that there's plenty of options for pushing beyond them, and for breaking the rules, and for doing cool things. I love that sort of stuff, particularly when it's flavor and particularly when it's supported by the mechanics. But in general, I think that the biggest mistakes I see people making is when they don't start from the rules as written, right? Like the example that comes to mind that I find hilarious because I keep on having the same discussion is people saying 5e characters are too overpowered, they never die, uh, and because like there's no way that you can exhaust their resources, they just have too many resources. And then on the flip side, they don't play by the rule in the book that suggests that you have 6 events happen in a day, right? They're like, oh no, one fight. I'm like, well, if you only have one fight in a day, then yeah, it makes sense that the players can go supernova all the time. But if you have 6 events, not all fights, but 6 events that have the potential to drain resources, that's the important thing, right? They have to have the potential to drain resources. And ideally, your players are smart about how they use those resources. Then you're talking about something different, right? And then suddenly, honestly, the game starts feeling a lot better if you play it that way, particularly for like a dungeon crawl type situation. Or like it's silly to say this, but D&D works really well as a dungeon crawl actually, and people don't do a lot of that. But if you are running a king, I highly recommend just try 6 events in a day. An event is anything that happens that has the potential to drain resources, right? Doesn't have to, right? There's a guy standing there and he blocks your path, right? You could fight him. You could use a spell to mind control him. You could try and charm your way past by talking to him, right? If you talk to him and charm your way past, that's uh, that's great because that uses the least resources. If you cast a spell, great. That uses probably 1 resource if it works, but if it fails, the fail condition is pretty harsh. And then you can fight him. That's probably the example that, like, if you fight in certain ways, you'll save resources. If you fight in other ways, you won't save resources. But like, still, that's an event, right? Unlocking a door. That's sort of a complicated event. I don't really believe in locked doors unless there's other things to do because they stop the adventure. Right? It's a break point if you don't design it right. So I avoid those sorts of things as much as I possibly can. But but yeah, look for 6 things to do in an adventuring day. And if you do that, I think suddenly you'll find that the classes start feeling a lot more balanced and a lot better in a lot of ways. So I would start from rules as written, um, rules as intended. I don't know. I think rules as written versus rules as intended is pretty close to the same thing. Rule of cool is very different, obviously, but I like rule of cool. I think rule of cool is great for flavor. That's all I'll say for that. I think how do you want to do this is the classic rule of cool thing. Nika. Nika states, well, I obviously have had some interest in alternate rule sets. You could totally talk about how one's desired narrative framing can inform what rules they want to borrow or design. Also, the group dynamics of implementing house/alternate rules. Yes, I could talk about that, and I talk about that a lot, and I have a lot of thoughts. This is another big one that like could be a whole topic for a whole video. Thank you, Wako and Nika, in particular, for those big video questions. There's been a couple other ones, but those are the two that are right next to each other, and so they're standing out to me right now. Um, yes, I think that one of the most important things that people forget is that rules and system inform the type of game that you're going to play. Um, Playing a dungeon world campaign is a different type of experience than playing a Dungeons and Dragons type campaign. Playing a Dungeons and Dragons type campaign is different than playing a Burning Wheel type campaign. The rules inform the story. Um, I happen to think that's the coolest thing in the world. And so by changing the rules, you can change the way stories unfold. Um, I'm going to use myself as an example because why not use myself as an example? But my Thursday stream, right, which is basically a massive dungeon crawl, a mega dungeon, um, is they're basically playing through a variant, upgraded, changed version of Carisha, which is designed by Janelle Jacques, who is a trans designer from the 80s who was fantastic. And I love her dungeons. So they're basically playing through that. It's a dungeon crawl game, and we have certain minor homebrew rules that encourage certain types of play, right? Um, the idea that, like I told them right away at the beginning, you have to tell me how you defeat traps, right? You can't just roll thieves' tools to defeat traps. You have to tell me how you defeat traps, right? So the flame shooting out of the side of the wall on the staircase, they like found, I forget what it was, wax or something like that or something, and they stuck it in the holes to block the traps, right? That just changes the way play unfolds. It's great. It feels good, right? If they just roll to defeat the trap and then like the trap is defeated or not defeated, then what's the point? So coming up with sort of ingenious ways to deal with these things just makes me super happy. It's a lot of fun to see that. Uh, and that's very different style of play than my Monday group, where we are it's called the Assassination of Primarch Michael Black Ice, and the premise of it is basically that they are a spy organization that's trying to uncover information and replace find a way to subvert, defeat, and or replace uh, the leader of a nation who is heading towards fascism. I don't know if he's fully a fascist yet, but he's close enough to a fascist that I don't feel the need to defend him. And like that, we've implemented belief systems so that they're not as a level gain experience, so that they're not incentivized to go out and kill monsters all the time, right? And that changes the type of story. It's not we're going to defeat fascists via punching them. It's we're going to defeat fascists via accomplishing narratives that help us defeat fascists. Um, and I think that the like gameplay loop or the reward system really affects that sort of thing, and I love that. Your other question that you ask is the group dynamics of implementing house/alternate rules. Yeah, that's a complicated one. I don't really have a good answer. I don't feel like I've developed best practices with that yet, as evidenced by Discord. Um, Generally, there are two types of house rules that come up. Type one are things that I want to do, in which case, typically my way of doing it is, hey, we're going to try this thing. If we don't like it, we don't have to keep it. I just say that we're going to try this thing, and if we don't like it, we don't have to keep it. The other type is house rules that players suggest. I don't get a lot of those, although it does happen occasionally. Um, and I think in the future, I kind of want to just do the same thing. I don't feel like I've handled it super well in the past. What I've done in the past is like we've had a group discussion about it, and if there's not a clear consensus, I'll do a vote. Um, but I don't even know if I like that because I feel like the group discussion is based on like theory rather than actuality. We don't really know what the house rule is going to feel like unless people have played with that house rule before. And even then, we don't know how to feel in this game. The example that comes to mind is actually one that Nika was involved in. Nika plays in my Chosen Few campaign on Sundays. She's great. She plays a bard/warlock who is a noble, and all that comes with that. And we had a discussion about using an alternate initiative system. Um, And the conversation was really fun. I really enjoyed the conversation about it. I thought that people brought a lot of good points to it. I happen to not feel like initiative is super important in D&D 5e, like at all. It basically just feels like turn order, going clockwise or counterclockwise doesn't make a huge difference most of the time. There are moments where it's impactful, but I think that on average, it's just not that impactful. Um, and there's a couple of reasons for that, but I think one of them is that it's very rare for spellcasters to give themselves a huge dexterity bonus, and the people who have the most potential to affect initiative, to make initiative impactful, are spellcasters. Um, and then even then, I think that individual initiative sort of messes with that. And then on top of that, I think that D&D just doesn't have a lot of things that make initiative impactful, right? Even something like these creatures are in difficult terrain, so they have to move twice as fast to get out of this spell or whatever they need to move. Um, doesn't feel that important to me. Um, on average, over long term, it's not like Pathfinder First Edition where like uh, basically at higher levels people can do so much damage that the most important thing you can do is roll high on initiative. And so it's like how do you get the like if you look at Pathfinder First Edition power builds, every high level class has improved initiative as a feat or whatever it is, because it's like the most important thing is going first so you can kill your opponent before they can do anything, because your opponents are powerful enough to kill you in one hit and you're powerful enough to kill them in one hit. But I don't think 5e is really like that, and I don't think my games are really like that. But so anyway, one of my players proposed in fact, Nika, I think, proposed a different. Am I right? Whatever, proposed a different initiative system that we could potentially use, and we discussed it as a group, and then voted against doing it. And I think that might have been a mistake. We were still level 1, but I think had we been like level 3 or 4, I would have just said, hey, let's learn the system and try it tomorrow and see how it feels, and then we can have the discussion and vote on it. Because I think that sometimes when you don't try it, it's hard to know, and inertia is a very powerful thing. I think that people tend not to want to try new things without a good reason. So I don't know. I think trying things is a good idea. I think there's a limit to how much you can try before it becomes like tiring. But yeah, but I think yeah, I think that's what I'd say. I think that if there's a lot of that's what I'd say about that. Okay, on to the last set of questions. These are from Mark. Mark is one of my players in my Tuesday group. It is great. Mark's Barbarian Goss in my first campaign is one of the first characters that I ever ran who got to level 20, and it was really exciting and fun, and they changed the entirety of the world, and my players in my Shimmering Seas campaigns right now are dealing with some of the fallout of their choices. Yay! Mark asks a series of questions. Is there a max capacity for number of players in a single game? The most I've run regularly was 11. And you have to change things to make that work. I'll just say that candidly. Combat is too slow with 11 people. You just need to find ways to run it faster. I swapped when I had all 11 people there. Eventually, that group shrunk down to 7 over time, which was great. 7 is fine. With 11 people, it was too slow when I ran it. I moved to narrative combat, sort of in a Dungeon World style of like, you, what do you do? You, what do you do? You, what do you do? The enemy does this in response to that, you know. And I called on people. It's probably not as fair as initiative, but it flows a lot faster, and it keeps people on the edge a little bit more. So that's one of the things I would say immediately is you got to make rule changes the more people you have. The other thing I'd say is that like West Marches campaigns are awesome. I would love to have a couple of friends to run a West Marches campaign. The idea of a West Marches campaign is basically that you are, well, there's a lot of different versions of it, but the version that I'm most intrigued by is there's like a group of people. They are adventurers or profiteers or whatever you want to say, but they all are based in a central location. Probably you have a Discord server in that's about that central location. We'll call it Castle Awesome. Cool, Castle Awesome. So we've got Castle Awesome, and we put Castle Awesome smack dab in the middle of a map, and everything around Castle Awesome is untamed wilds. And there's rumors about it, but there's random hexes and things like that. And whenever you feel like leaving Castle Awesome, you pick a spot that you want to go because there's like a monument there or a tomb or a mine or whatever. And you just say in the Discord server, hey, I want to go raid this tomb or mine over there, tomb over there, right? And we see who wants to come with. And you like get a random group of people from this group of like 30 or 40 people. And you get one of the DMs because you kind of need multiple DMs to run this thing unless you're insane. Ooh, I can do it all by myself. Nah, that's not fun. Ooh, Zach can do some. And and Marcus can do something. That's even better. And your group just sort of goes there and runs through the mine. There's a lot of things that need to happen for this to work, but it works really great with large groups and friend groups. It just seems so freaking cool to me, and it's a really great way to create emergent stories, which I think is awesome. So that sort of ups the max capacity. In terms of at one table at one time, again, I ran 11, and I think like I did it okay. I think probably in terms of like at the table at one time, Matt Mercer does 7. I think 8 probably is about the cap before things have to start changing. Have you ever DM'd a game for only 2 PCs? Yes. But even more than that, I would DM a game for 1 PC. I love D&D Duets. D&D Duets is a great website. If you're not familiar with D&D Duets, I recommend it highly. But I love one-on-one D&D. It's some of my favorite stuff. I've done some really beautiful stories with people that have been really emotionally impactful. Sometimes a character goes off on their own. I had a player who was leaving town for a month, but there were 4 games in their absence, so we had his character go on a solo quest, and he and I roleplayed that when he got back from vacation, and then rejoined that. And that was some of my favorite role playing that we ever did. There's some great heartbreaking and heart-wrenching moments in that. So yeah, 2 players, sure. 1 player, even better. I think it's a different type of focus, but it is a good thing to do. And we may do some on the channel, not too different, in the not too distant future. Do you try to encourage shy players to roleplay? And if so, how do you do so? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think that I don't really believe in a right way to play D&D in terms of you must roleplay, you must not roleplay. I have played with DMs who don't do character voices at all or anything like that, and that's like fine. I don't really mind. That doesn't really bother me. I'm less worried about shy players role playing and more worried about the fact that players that aren't shy sometimes step over players that are shy. That's more the thing that I'm worried about. It's not role playing so much as opportunity. And it's the same thing as a teacher, right? When I'm teaching students, I want to make sure that people who are shy and don't have anything to say, honestly, that's fine. They don't have to have things to say. But I want to make sure that people who do have things to say feel that they have space to say things. So how do I do that? Well, I'm a fan of splitting the party. I think that splitting the party solves a lot of those problems, right? I don't think I handled it perfectly, but a session that really meant a lot to me and was a lot of fun. I had 3 of my party members in my Thursday game were kidnapped by an evil corporate organization called Hubert Songshore Enterprises. And the 4th basically avoided capture. Grr. Arg. Thank you, Marcus. And we had a session that, again, I probably could have balanced it better, but essentially we had a session where she freed them. And she is a relatively shy or quiet player. I don't know if she's shy because she's playing on stream. So I don't think anyone who plays on stream is really that shy. But she is a quiet player and she sometimes doesn't speak up as much as some other people. This is Asthma from the Thursday game. And giving her sort of all of that focus for most of an episode, probably 2 hours of an episode, was kind of like a huge deal. But it ended up, I thought, just working brilliantly. So that's sort of my thought there. Find a way to split the party and put them alone. And then focus on them. No one else can tell them what to do because they're not there. No one else can help them because they're not there. No one else can shout over them because they're not there. And sort of talk to them. And when you do, put your attention on them. I also think that this can also be helped just by asking questions, paying attention to the players and asking questions. Um, hey, so and so, what do you think of the situation? And sometimes you have to reframe the question in a way that like challenges them. Like, hey, this person says that this teammate of yours, this paladin of goodliness, says that all thievery is always wrong and that all thieves deserve to die. You're a rogue who's a member of the Thieves Guild. How do you feel about that? Right? Set up that moment there for them. And I think that reframing thing is something that a lot of DMs don't do as much as they should. You just want to make sure that like everyone is aware of what's going on. Sometimes you'll leave a conversation going and it goes on for a long time. And like the truth of the matter is that the subject matter of the conversation has like in a meeting, like a business meeting or whatever. The subject matter has been lost. And so like it helps to sort of reframe this, whatever has been discussed in terms of a mission statement, right? Sometimes we get so abstract that we don't quite realize what we're doing. We don't quite realize that that over there is a person's life that we're trying to save or whatever desperate situation we're in. Right. Like I mean, an example that comes to mind is I had a group of people who were trying to save someone who was captured, and their whole strategy was like based on the odds the person would die from a fireball, right? Um, and like the second you're talking about that sort of thing, you have to recognize it's probably not. You have to reframe that as something that they should care about, and something that has meaning. So yeah, that's sort of my how do I encourage people to RP? Don't really encourage them RP. I encourage them to engage with the game. Also, I'll recommend them playing Burning Wheel. Just to bring it full circle, I recommend all shy people play Burning Wheel because it's a game about character growth and development, and you can't really play that game without your character growing and developing. And I think that's sort of more important. On to our last question before I'm also taking questions from Twitch, although I haven't really had any. Last question. Have you seen an increase in people interested in playing D&D in the quote COVID era, end quote, or have you not seen any difference? Thank you, Marcus, for my question answer. I appreciate that. For those of you listening, Marcus just said, excellent question and great answer. And I think both things are true. Go Mark Ackerley for asking that question. And thank you, Marcus, for complimenting me on my answer. Yeah, last question. People have questions in stream, which of course I will happily listen to and answer. Have you seen an increase in people interested in playing D&D in the COVID era, or have you not seen any difference? I have seen an increase in interest. For those of you that don't know, I am a pro DM. This is part of my financial support comes from running games, and I have gotten more inquiries and interest in this era of COVID-19. Yeah, people have a little bit more time. They're not spending as much time on commutes. I wouldn't say it's like an exponential increase, but it's certainly a little bit more. Ironically, I offered early on in the whole thing to run more games for free, and I got a lot of traction in the D&D world of people saying, yeah, that's awesome. Go play with Matthew. But no one actually came to it. I think that my Twitter feed is just too D&D centric mostly, that like what I tweet goes to people who already know how to play D&D, and getting noobs in is not, Twitter is not actually a good way to get new people involved in the game. I don't know. I've definitely had a little bit more interest. Some of my groups that were every other week have gone to weekly because of this, and a couple other things. But it's a mix. I don't think anything is that consistent. A lot of people are suffering more from financial strain now. I have a lot of players that are, shall we say, not super well off financially, and so I've been offering discount rates or free sessions to them. Or other players have been stepping up and sort of covering their share. There's sort of a lot of complicating factors, but yes, I would say there's more interest. It's not astronomical, but it certainly has happened. And I think that one of the nicer things about this horrible time is that people are really coming to value and understand the value of communication in a way that I don't think we did before. There's so much before forced social isolation. There was a lot of personal self-isolation where people would be online all the time and not communicate with each other. they would talk into the void. And I feel like there's still a lot of that, but I see more communication that's direct now. Um, Someone mentioned to me that they've made more phone calls in the last 2 months than they have in the last 10 years. And I think that's true of me too. Just chat with people. Um, and, Zoom and all those things. And I think that tabletop RPGs of all sorts, particularly Burning Wheel, is a good way to deal with that and a good way to deal with the feelings of isolation that we're experiencing now. Um, it's sort of weird, but when my 1 to 20 campaign ended, um, even though I'm friends with all those players and we start a new campaign that's also probably going to be a 1 to 20 campaign if all things go as planned. Um, there was something really sad. I felt like, by saying goodbye to those characters, I was saying goodbye to friends of mine, imaginary friends, but people that I'd come to know really, really well. Um, Saying goodbye to Asha and Goss and Bale and Zara and Brina um, definitely was a little heartbreaking. Even though all their players are fine. I saw them last Tuesday. Not a big deal. But they are. But seeing those characters say farewell was really heartbreaking, and I think that's really interesting because I think in the era of coronavirus, this social isolation, having two sets of friends, real and imaginary, and developing relationships with them is so profoundly beautiful and wonderful, and can be really helpful and supportive. So that is what I would say about that. And so I encourage you to play role playing games if you're not already. Although, let me check chat. Yep, I think everyone here plays role playing games. Most of you with me. Although some of you I don't know very well. I don't know some of you. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them. I will answer them. Marcus, if I missed any questions, I don't think I did. Yeah, I don't want to click it. Let me know. But if anyone has any questions, I'm going to leave this running for just a couple minutes. I should probably say something. What systems do you most want to play in currently as a player? Ooh, that is a great question. Ooh, what systems I most want to play in currently as a player? Well, I mean, my interest is always in playing in things that I haven't played in before. So that's a big deal for me. I want to play things that I haven't played before. Uh, that company that made Questlandia that I showed you guys earlier also made a game called Damn the Man, Save the Music. I would love to play in that. I haven't played Pathfinder 2E yet. I would love to play in a Pathfinder 2E game. That's very high on my list. There's two different competing Powered by the Apocalypse Steven Universe games. I would like to play both of those. I think that sounds hilarious and fun and interesting. Torchbearer is the Luke Crane like dungeon crawl game. He's the guy who made Burning Wheel, and another one of his games he made is Torchbearer. It's right here, and this game has intimidated me more than any other game that I've ever looked at in my entire life. I find it so scary to play, and I'm so certain that is just stupidity and nervousness more than anything else. But um, I am scared of it, and I would love someone to run it for me, so that I could be less scared of it. But it's a hardcore dungeon crawl game. It's one of the few games where if you stand still and do nothing, you will die. You will first go insane, and then you will die. A lot of the principles of this game were used. Luke Crane actually was used, I believe, as a consultant in the computer game Darkest Dungeon. And so if you are a fan of Darkest Dungeon, it's rooted in this game Torchbearer, which I think is really cool. And I would love to play it, but I'm so scared. And I thought I was going to run it as a one-shot once when one of my Burning Wheel players could show up for a Burning Wheel session. And I looked at it, I'm like, no, never mind. Too many rules. Don't know what to do. And I was very scared. But yeah, that's very much like high on my list of things that I would love to play in as a player to get in the mode of how to run it as well. Other things, yeah, I don't know. I'm down to try anything. I particularly the things that I haven't played before. So really anything. I'm kind of interested in revisiting GURPS Second Edition, um, because that's sort of what I was raised on, but I never really played it. I mostly designed things in it. I'm sort of interested in revisiting that. I'm also sort of intrigued. Oh, God, you know what I really want? I feel like I want to play Fourth Edition Dungeons and Dragons again, um, either as a player or a game master. I don't really care. But there's a couple of designed things in there that look awesome. But I feel like I need to have a better sense of the rules than I currently do to run them or play that game. Um, Fourth Edition is the most tactical of the D&D games, and I kind of like that. I get why people didn't like that, but I kind of love that. Yeah. Um, any other questions? This is awkward time delay thing. So start typing your question before I finish the last one if you have a question. Also, if you ask a question, brownie points to you. I don't know what brownie points are worth. Maybe a brownie. Who knows? Do we have brownie points? Nah, we don't have brownie points. I can't give brownie points out. But theoretically, I would give brownie points. If this were school, I would call on random people in chat, but this is not school, which is a good thing. School's out for the year. I'm on vacation from school, at least until July. Okay. Well, it says that I've been streaming for 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 27 seconds. I think I'll wait for 2 hours and 20 minutes. And if I haven't had a question by then, I will stop at that point. And that's totally fine. Someone messaged me. Let's see if they messaged me a question. No. They messaged me. Advertisement for something cool going on right now. Featherfall is promoting a Featherfall show. Cool. Okay, well, I really enjoyed doing that. I thank you for your questions. If you asked a question, I always appreciate it because it helps me generate content. Some of these things are worth further discussion. I might go back and highlight some of them and like I don't know, have like a conversation about like one of these topics in detail, bring on a couple of guests and chat about something for, actually talk about it for like one of the like a couple of these questions are good enough that we could have like an hour long, 2 hour long conversation about some of them. So yeah, we might do this again. I enjoyed this. I also really enjoyed going over the homebrew stuff and talking about that with Marcus. Yeah, if anyone's designing any magic items or homebrew classes or anything like that, I would love to look at them and discuss that on stream. I don't know if I'm ready or capable really of discussing whole new games, although I would love to get to the point where I feel that I'm ready to do that. But yeah, anything within, if you're designing any homebrew or magical items or adventures or quests or anything like that inside of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, I would love to do that. I would love to look at that and go over it and discuss it with you. Particularly if it's in the design phase. I don't really want to. I don't want to turn this into a review where I just talk about things. I want to instead, you know, talk about the process of creation because that's more interesting to me. Okay. Well, thank you, those of you that stuck with us, and thank you everyone who didn't stick with us but hung out at the beginning. And thank you everyone who's watching the VOD of this. Thank you, really, everyone who's alive, and thank you for being alive. I really think that's a good thing, and I am glad that you are. Please do not forget the most important things in life: call your cat, feed your mom. Bye, everyone.